संस्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। So last time, as you know, we had discussed about prana. So what prana is from the philosophical standpoint. So many of the ideas were new to us. So some said that it was not easy to follow, and one person said it was a mind-boggling talk. So we will just have a little summary of last time what we had discussed. I'll just share the points. So here you can see just a summing up of the last discussion. We had seen that the whole universe is composed of two materials, Akasha and Prana. In Sankhya terminology, Akasha represents Prakriti because Prakriti is also matter, Akasha is also matter, and Prana represents Purusha. But the difference is that in Sankhya the Purusha is absolutely inactive, but here Swamiji says that Prana is the vital force in everything. So second point, we have seen that Akasha is the infinite omnipresent material of this universe, and so is this Prana. It is the infinite omnipresent manifesting power of the universe, so that is the force. And the knowledge and control of this Prana is what is meant by Pranayama. Then we had seen that there are various manifestations of prana, gross and subtle. So thought is the finest, the most subtlest and highest action of prana. So if we can control our thoughts, we can also control prana. Then we had seen that all manipulations of the subtle forces of the body, the different manifestations of prana, if trained, give a push to the mind and help it go up higher and become superconscious finally. Because we should remember that all forces are just the manifestation of prana. So any force in the body, if we give it a higher direction, we are actually giving a higher direction to prana and then to our mind. And the most obvious manifestation of this prana in the human body is the motion of the lungs, which causes breathing. But pranayama is not breathing, but controlling that muscular power which moves the lungs and therefore enables us to breathe. And when a man has concentrated all his energies, he masters the prana that is in his body. Because energy means what? Energy means that some force is acting. So if you control energy, you control that force and you control prana. And what is the aim of yoga? The aim of the yoga is, the whole science of yoga is directed to the end of teaching human beings how, by intensifying the power of assimilation, that is by concentrating our energies, how to shorten the time for reaching perfection. We will all reach perfection one day, that is true. But if we don't do anything to shorten the process, it may take maybe hundreds of years, thousands of years. So if we want to get rid of suffering and reach the goal early, we have to accelerate the process by directing our prana, directing our energies towards that one goal. So all this we have seen last time. So today we will go to the next step. First we had seen the basic steps, first steps of yoga. Then the next discussion we had was yam and niyama, the restraints and observances. So now comes asana and pranayama. After yam and niyam comes asana and pranayama. So before pranayama, I wanted to discuss what prana is, which we have done last time. So asana, it is a simple, nothing much complex there. That asana means posture, how we sit. So in Hatha Yoga, that is those whose aim is only to make the body healthy and all. They have various kinds of asana. You must have heard Bhujangasana and this and that. So those are not our subject of discussion here. Here asana is only meant by how you sit when you practice yogic exercises. Yogic exercise means not Hatha Yoga, of Raj Yoga. That is, either you practice japa or you practice meditation or you practice pranayama. So you have to sit in some posture, no? That posture is called asana. So in Raj Yoga also a series of exercises, physical and mental, is to be gone through every day until we reach certain higher states. So naturally, it is extremely necessary that we should find a posture in which we can sit long and comfortably. If we have to get up every 5 minutes or 10 minutes, then actually no practice can be done. So the posture which is the easiest for ourselves has to be chosen. Many postures are there, like Padmasana is the most popular posture, but it is very difficult for most people, and for Westerners it is practically impossible. So you have to see which posture suits you best. We have to choose for ourselves. Because for one, a certain posture may be comfortable, while for another person that may be difficult. So Swami Vivekananda says that when we practice yoga, when we practice pranayama, meditation, etc., then although we may not realize it, but a good deal happens in the body. Because those things affect our prana, and through the prana they affect our nerves. So nerve currents are displaced and given a new channel for those who practice very sincerely, of course. Just if somebody sits for 10-15 minutes, nothing will happen. So for those who practice hard, then new sorts of vibrations will begin, and slowly the whole constitution is remodeled. But the main part of the activity, many activities happen in the body at that time, but the main part of the activity will happen along the spinal cord. So for any posture, we can sit in any posture, but for any kind of posture, the main thing which is necessary is that the spinal column should be free, and we have to sit erect. So these three, neck, head and the spine, it should be in a straight line. You cannot sit like this, neck will be out of alignment like this. You cannot sit like that. You cannot sit like this, because then the spine will be bent. So these three, in the Gita also, in the 6th chapter, it is about meditation. So there also it is said, Samam Kaya Shiro Grivam. Shira, Kaya and neck, all these should be in a straight line. For any kind of posture we can adopt, but this is the most important part. All these three will have to be in a straight line. It cannot be bent. You cannot sit like this or like this. So Swamiji says here, let the whole weight of the body be supported by the ribs. The ribs should support the whole weight of the body, and then we can have an easy natural posture with the spine straight. So he says you will easily see that you cannot think very high thoughts with the chest inside. If you sit like this, you cannot think. You cannot even study if you want to study. If you sit like this, you can't even study. So this is the main thing about asana. So about asana in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, only this much is mentioned, that sthira sukham asanam. Sthira means it should be stable. If you are tilting this way, tilting that way, afraid of falling down, that won't help. Sthira means it should be perfectly stable. And sukha means it should be comfortable. You should not have pain here, there when you are sitting. Then it will be a problem. So, what is the aim of sitting like this? First, that the spinal column should be straight, and firmness, sthira, what does it mean? It means that you should not feel the body at all. Because if you are conscious of the body, then your mind will be disturbed. What happens when we have aches and pains? Actually, what is happening? We are more conscious of that part which is paining. Our mind is drawn to that part. So if the mind is drawn so much to the body, then naturally the mind will become fickle, it cannot concentrate the mind. So stable, the asana should be firm, and stable means what? Means we should not even be conscious of the body then. So generally we find that as soon as we sit for a few minutes, all sorts of disturbances come into the body. But in yoga, when you practice yoga, then this should not happen. That is the thing. So when we have succeeded in conquering the body and keeping it firm, our practice also becomes firm, and the asana is said to be perfect then. That is the thing. So this much about asana, we will not go into much detail here. This is enough for us for an introduction. Now let us go to the next part. As after asana comes pranayama. Now pranayama is a fairly big topic, but we will just concentrate on what Swami Vivekananda says. He has explained it beautifully. Very, very few explanations are so good as his. So let us just discuss what he has said, and he will explain pranayama through physiology also, that what goes on inside the body actually when we are doing pranayama or something, what is happening, how our forces are concentrated. So all these questions will crop up. So he explains this wonderfully. It is a little complicated. So for that we have to discuss these three. There are actually two nerve currents in the spinal column, and there is a hollow canal called sushumna which runs through the spinal cord. So we will discuss that. Swamiji has explained on that, and we will also discuss the kundalini power. Generally we don't like to mention all that because so much fraud is going on. So many people are raising the kundalinis of others now. It has become a big joke. So generally we don't like to discuss, but Swamiji has explained on that basis. So we should have a little idea of Ida, Pingala, Sushumna, and when we bring these three, we cannot do without the kundalini or the coiled power. So we will just discuss in as simple way as possible. Now Swami Vivekananda says that there are two nerve currents in the spinal column called Ida and Pingala on two sides of the column. I'll show you a diagram where it will be clear. and there is a hollow canal called the Sushumna running through the spinal cord. From top to bottom, the whole spinal cord, that Sushumna comes and ends in the brain. And at the lowest end of the Sushumna, of the hollow canal, is what the yogis call the coiled up power. Coiled up power means Kundalini. So they describe it as in a triangular. Kundalini is described as a triangle in the symbological language of the yogis. And they say that when this power awakes, then it tries to force a passage through the hollow canal called Sushumna. In ordinary people, it is completely shut. Nothing goes up the Sushumna. Whole life it is shut. Nothing happens there. But for those who practice spiritual disciplines intensely, by the grace of God in time, that power becomes active and tries to find its way through that hollow canal. Ordinarily, nothing happens there. But when that power awakes, then it tries to find a way through that canal. And that is actually spiritual awakening. So Swamiji says that as that power rises, step by step, layer after layer of the mind opens to our vision. And wonderful powers and insights come to that yogi. And when that power has reached the brain, when that power awakes, it does not simply shoot up like suddenly. It goes step by step. So final destination is the brain. And when it reaches the brain, then the yogi attains perfection. He is completely free from this prison house of the mind and body. So, to imagine this, we will just see a photograph. Swamiji says that the spinal cord is composed in a peculiar manner. How is it? If we take the figure 8 like this, 8. There are two parts of 8 which are connected in the middle by that line. So suppose there are a number of 8s, one on top of the other. 8, 8, 8, 8. So they are all joining at some part in the middle. So he says, suppose you add 8 after 8 piled on top of the other, that will represent the spinal cord. And on the left is the Ida, on the right the Pingala, and the hollow canal which runs through the center of the spinal cord is Sushumna. So from a diagram it will be clear. Just share it. So here you can see this nadis. Nadis means there's canals, and there are various stages that are there are called the chakras, that is levels. Those are called the chakras. So you can see there that on the right is the Pingala Nadi and left Ida Nadi, that is called the moon, left nostril, and the Pingala is called the right sun or the right. And in between that vertical line from the top to bottom, that is the Sushumna Nadi, through which that power travels when it awakes. So these colored dots are the different levels. So they are called the chakras. So we just have to be familiar with two names. First is the bottom chakra, that is the Muladhara. Mool means root. Muladhara means the absolutely beginning. And the aim is the topmost one, that is the Sahasrara, that is here on the head. So in most people, that energy lies in a dormant state in the Muladhara. And slowly when it awakes, it travels through the various chakras till it reaches the Sahasrara. So from this diagram, we can have an idea of how the Ida Pingala goes like this. One on the left side, one on the right side, and the different levels where this power will rise, through which the power will rise, starting from Muladhara to ending in Sahasrara. Just for our understanding. So when the spinal cords, where the spinal cords ends in the below, in the Muladhara, in the lumbar vertebrae, a fine fiber, Swamiji says that a fine fiber issues downwards and the canal runs up even within that fiber, only much finer. It is very fine in there, very, very subtle form. And this canal, Sushumna canal, is closed at the lower end, which in terms of physiology, it is situated near what is called the sacral plexus. We know sacral plexus, then sacrum plexus, all that. So according to modern physiology, that sacral plexus is triangular in form. That matches with what the yoga scriptures say, because they also imagine it triangular in form. And the different plexuses that have their centers in the spinal canal stand for the different chakras or the different levels. Okay, that is in terms of physiology. Now the yogi conceives of several centers which are represented by the colored dots, these centers, beginning with the Muladhara at the bottom, the basic, and ending with the Sahasrara, which is the 1,000-petaled lotus in the brain. So if we take these different plexuses as representing the lotuses, the idea of the yogi can be very easily understood in the language of modern physiology. Now Swamiji explains this. How to connect the structure of the body, the structure of the spinal cord with what the yogis say. So we all know, according to physiology, that there are two sorts of actions in the nerve currents. These nerve currents, Ida and Pingala, etc. So we know that physiology also tells us there are two types of currents. What? We know sensory nerves and motor nerves. We have all read that. So what are the sensory nerves? Just to refresh, sensory nerves carry sensory impulses from the body to the central nervous system. Okay. And motor nerves carry impulses from the central nervous system to the body. Because any action if we do, there has to be both coordination, no? There has to be coordination between the body and the central nervous system for any action to take place. Brain will go through the impulses, will go through the nerves to the body, then the body will act. Now if suppose I want to raise my hand, what is happening? Sensation from the mind has to travel to the body through the central nervous system. Then this body will say, okay, raise the hand. Mind will say, raise the hand. So similarly, when we touch something, suppose we touch something extremely hot, what is happening? Then the sensations are carried from the body through the central nervous system to the mind. So if you touch something very hot, immediately the mind tells, oh, don't touch it. So what is happening here? Sensations are being carried from the body to the mind. So these two are always there. Sensory nerves and motor nerves. We all know that. So of course all these vibrations are finally connected to the mind. So this is one thing we have to remember. Next, he describes in a wonderful way that what happens when we direct our energies through pranayama, when we try to channelize our energy, what happens actually. So he says that let us take one example from physics. We all hear of electricity and every day we experience the power of electricity and various other forces connected with it. So what electricity is, we don't know exactly. But this much we know, that it is some sort of motion, some sort of impulse, some sort of energy. Now, there are various motions in the universe. So many kinds of motion are there. When we move, so many things are moving. Clouds are moving, leaves are moving. So hundreds and millions of kinds of motions are there. Electricity is also motion. Now what is the difference between electricity and other kinds of ordinary motions? What is the difference? See, we never think about these things. So here Swamiji says, suppose this table moves. I pick up the table, put it from here to there. Now, all the molecules which compose this table, all the atoms or whatever you say, out of which the table is formed, they also move. When I pick up the table and put it in another place, everything is going. But they are ordinarily moving in different directions. They are moving in different directions within the table. Although their table is there, but it is not that everything, all the atoms and molecules in the table, in ordinary conditions, it is not that they are moving in one direction, they are moving in different directions. But if they are all made to move in the same direction, that has to be done through electricity. That is what electricity does. So what is the difference between electrical motion and ordinary motion? Electric motion makes the molecules of a substance, of a body, it makes them move, all of them, in the same direction. So he says, if all the air molecules in one room, in this room, there are so many hundreds of thousands of millions of molecules. If all of them are made to move in the same direction, this whole room will become a gigantic battery. It will be a tremendous battery generating that current, because current is nothing but when all the molecules in one substance, they move in the same direction. This you have to remember if you want to understand what pranayama does. And now coming to the body, after having explained this, Swamiji says now, another example of physiology we have to remember when we connect pranayama with what happens inside our body then. So he says, the center which regulates the respiratory system, the breathing system, our breathing system, the center which regulates that, has a sort of controlling action over the whole system of nerve currents in the body. This we should remember. So pranayama is dealing particularly with the lungs, So how does it control everything? Through the motion of the lungs. This is the secret which Swamiji says. The center in our body which regulates the respiratory system, the breathing system, has a sort of controlling action over the whole system of nerve currents. So if that is controlled, through that the whole nervous system comes into our control. So these two things you have to remember. That if the molecules of a substance all move in the same direction, tremendous power is generated because it becomes a huge battery. And secondly, when the respiratory system is controlled, then the whole system of nerve currents in the body is also controlled. This much should be understood. Now we will be able to understand why this breathing is practiced in a special way in pranayama. What happens? It is a systematic, regular type of breathing. So when we breathe rhythmically, what happens? What happens is there is a tendency of all the molecules in the body to move in the same direction. This is the secret. And he has explained before that when every molecule in the body can move in the same direction, tremendous power is generated. So, when the mind, he says, when the mind changes into will means what? Will means when we concentrate our energies, decide to do something and concentrate our energies towards that one thing so that we can do that. We are focusing the mind. So when the mind changes into will, the nerve currents in the body change into a motion which is similar to electricity. Because the whole system is tuned in one direction. And that generates power. Because even in physiology, we know that the nerves in the body, they have been proved to show polarity under the actions of electric currents. In the nerve, there is a positive and negative in the body. So very similar to the electric motion, where there is no positive and negative, there will be no electricity. So this shows that when the will is transformed into the nerve currents, it is changed into something like electricity. Because in the nerves also there is polarity. So when all the motions of the body have become perfectly rhythmical, when it is perfectly in rhythm, there is no molecule acting this way or that way, then what happens? Then the body has, as it were, become a gigantic battery of will. Will is that power. This tremendous will, the tremendous willpower, is called willpower. That is what the yogi requires. So that that energy can be awakened through that power and can make to travel through the hollow canal which is Sushumna. So these breathing exercises, they tend to bring a rhythmic action in the body and help us through the respiratory center to control other centers. And the aim of pranayama final is to rouse up that power which lies dormant at the Muladhara within each one of us. So here Swamiji in those days also he said, more than 20 years ago, there we had not even heard of wireless telegraphy, or we did not know what wireless was. People could not even think that electricity could be sent through without any wires. So here he says, taking the analogy of electricity, we find that we can send a current only along a wire. At that time, that was only the thing possible. But Swamiji says here, but nature requires no wires to send her tremendous currents. What is this? Lightning and all? It does not require any wire. So at that time, Swamiji says, this proves that wires are not really necessary. But only our inability to dispense with those compels us to use wires. So at that time we said, actually wires are not necessary. And now we see that it's proving to be true. Everything is wireless nowadays. So then, now all the sensations and motions of the body are being sent into the brain and again sent out of it through these wires, these nerve fibers that we all know. Through the sensory and motor nerves, what is happening? From the body, the sensations are going to the mind, from the mind again to the body. Examples we just saw. Now, the columns of the sensory and motor fibers in the spinal cord are the Ida and the Pingala. The Ida and the Pingala, both sides of the spinal cord. These are the columns of the sensory and motor fibers. They are the main channels through which these two currents in the opposite directions travel. So now he says, these are the nerve fibers. So now he says, why should not the mind send news? Mind is sending news to the body, body is sending news to the mind through the fibers. So he says, why do we need wires? Why can't we do this wirelessly within the body? So he says, the yogi says you can do that. How? How can these sensations go without any wire? So yogis say, if we can do that, then all our problem will be solved. We can get rid of the bondage of matter. There need not be any big wire connecting everything. Like when we are connecting to this TV here to show the images, there is no wire here. Because it's a big hassle, connect this, then someone may trip over it, so it's a big bondage. So here also yogis say, why do we need those Ida and Pingala, the nerve currents, to send messages? Why can't we dispense with it? If we can dispense with it, we can become free of matter. So he says, the yogi says, it is possible. How? He says, if we can make the current pass through the sushumna, that hollow canal, which is within the spinal cord, we can solve this problem. The mind has made this network of the nervous system. Now we have to break that so that we don't require any wires to work through. Then alone, Swamiji says, will all knowledge come to us, because then there will be no more bondage of the body. That is why the yogi says that he has to get control of that sushumna, that hollow canal. Because if he can send mental currents, sensations through the hollow canal without any nerve fibers acting as wires, his whole problem will be solved. And as we have seen, in ordinary persons, the Sushumna is completely closed. No actions go through it. All our actions go through Ida Pingala, through the nerves. But the yogi proposes a practice, various practices are there, not one, through which this can be opened. This canal can be opened and the nerve currents can be made, those energy, it can be made to travel through that, dispensing of all kinds of, the need of all kinds of nerve fibers. This is the thing. This is the secret. And when we know that, see what happens when in our everyday life, sensations are being carried every minute of the day, every second of the day, from the body to the brain, from the brain to the body through these nerve fibers. And whenever a sensation is carried to any center in the body, there is a reaction. So in automatic centers, suppose food digestion is not within our control in ordinary human beings. It is automatic. So what happens? As soon as we eat something, automatically there is a reaction from the stomach. What is the reaction? Oh, something has come. Let me start digestion. The enzymes are produced, everything is done. So there is a reaction. So whenever sensation is carried to any center, there has to be reaction. In the case of automatic centers like digestion, etc., it is automatic. I mean, we don't have any hold of it. But in case of conscious centers, like, we are conscious that hand, if I am touching this, I am conscious that I am touching the table. So in those cases, it is followed first by perception, secondly by motion. Suppose you go in the trekking or something, you find some wild animal. What happens? First there is a perception. Oh, this dangerous animal is coming. Then action. Just move away. Go as far as possible. So in conscious centers, this happens. First perception, then motion. And all perception is the reaction to action from outside. What is perception? Something outside is impinging on the Jnanendriyas, the organs of knowledge. Then perception comes, no. So it is a reaction. If a person is completely blind, if a tiger comes and stands before him, he won't know. Because there is no perception from the outside world and there is no reaction also. Without perception, what will there be a reaction? But in ordinary persons who can see, first they will see that tiger, then they will run away. So conscious centers, first this perception occurs, then occurs motion. So all perception is what? Is the reaction from outside, what we see or hear or something. But now the question comes, if this is the fact, then what happens when we dream? What happens when we dream? All perceptions are coming from outside. We have seen. If we eat some food, oh, very delicious. Some food we say, oh, I don't like it at all. Some sights we say very beautiful. Some places are ugly. Some smells are very good. Some smells are not good. So all these perceptions, we know that they have to come from outside and then there will be a reaction. But what happens in dream? Nothing is coming from outside. But we are having reaction. If we see some tiger in a dream, when we wake up, we are, oh my God, what a fearful dream. So the question is, how do perceptions in dream arise? We perceive a dream. We have seen when we analyze the body and all, in those discussions we analyzed, that dream also is a perception. But there is no action from outside. So sensory motions are therefore coiled up somewhere in the body. Otherwise, from where is it coming? Those perceptions, when you cannot see in dream, we are closed our eyes and sleeping nicely, snoring. What happens then? So this proves that a certain motion in the brain molecules has been set up by the motion in the carrying nerves. And there is nothing from outside there. So, what happens in dream? I have seen something before. I have gone to maybe some beautiful place and seen that scenery. And in dreams, I am seeing it again. Some city I had gone, I am seeing it again. I can remember that. So when I remember, that city is not in front of me any longer. But I can still remember it. So, in memory as in dream, there is the same phenomena. The intensity may vary. But from where is the action that sets up that same sorts of vibrations in the brain? Like in dream, similar in memory. So from where is it coming? Because that city is no longer before me. It is certainly not from the primary sensations. The primary sensations have come and gone. When I actually saw the city, those sensations have come and gone. They are finished. So from where is this recurrence coming? So this means it must be that those sensations have been stored somewhere in the body. Otherwise, how will it come? And because they are stored somewhere, by their acting, when they start acting, those sensations become active, they bring out the reaction which we call dream. Now, the center where all these residual sensations are stored up, everything is there, like in a hard disk in a computer. That center is the Muladhara. Everything is stored up there. And the coiled up energy we have seen, that is called the Kundalini energy. Now, if this coiled up energy be roused and made active and then consciously made to travel up the Sushumna canal, there is also reaction. As we have seen, all external perceptions bring a reaction. Here everything is happening inside, but inside also there will be reaction. Because these are also internal perceptions. So when this canal opens and that energy travels upwards and acts upon those centers you can see in that, those colored dots. So as it acts upon center after center, there is a tremendous reaction in the body. Yeah, tremendous reaction. That is why Sri Ramakrishna said, so when we had read Gospel in the first, when we had read in the beginning, we could not understand. Sri Ramakrishna said that whatever has happened, those spiritual experiences which I have undergone, if an ordinary person would have even 1% of that, his body would have been destroyed. So we could not understand, why will the body be destroyed? What happens? This is the reason. Because in the mind and body which is not fit, if these reactions come, then it is too much for the body to bear. So the body breaks down. That is what happens. We all know in normal life also, some emotions when they are roused up, the body succumbs. Like people when they hear some very shocking news, sometimes they faint, because that emotional disturbance is such that the body cannot bear that. So here also, when that power awakes and strikes center after center, there is a tremendous reaction. When a minute portion of the energy travels along a nerve fiber and causes reaction from the centers, that perception is either dream or imagination. We know. Very minute quantity of energy that gives rise to all this. But Swamiji says, when by the power of long internal meditation, the vast mass of energy that is stored up, and then we have seen how through pranayama it becomes like electricity and travels along the sushumna. So when it awakens and travels and strikes center after center, there is a tremendous reaction, immensely superior to the reaction of dream or imagination. Immensely superior, immensely more intense than the reaction of sense perception also. Sense perception is also reaction, has a reaction. It is even much more intense than even sense perception. So when Swami Vivekananda asked Sri Ramakrishna, have you seen God? What did Sri Ramakrishna say? Yes. Even in a more intense form as I see you. This is the explanation. How can it be more intense? Because then what opens before the yogi, the world which opens before the yogi, is much more intense than what we get through sense perception. That is called super sensuous perception. And when it reaches the what Swami Vivekananda calls the metropolis of all sensations here, the brain, then what happens? The whole brain reacts, and the result is the full blaze of illumination, which is the perception of the self. That is it. So as this force travels from center to center, layer after layer of the mind, as it were, opens up, and this universe is perceived by the yogi in its fine or causal form. Then alone the causes of the universe, both as sensations as well as reaction, are known as they are. Then the whole secret becomes open before that yogi, and all knowledge comes to him. That is the thing. So this is how Swami Vivekananda describes. Slowly we have gone step by step. Again we will do the summing up, so we will know how in a wonderful way he explains the physiology connected with our this, how the breathing system, how the respiratory system, through physiology he explains how it controls the nerve currents throughout the body, and what actually happens when we breathe rhythmically, when we do pranayama, when we do meditation. What is happening? What is happening is all the molecules in the body are being made to move in a similar direction. And the more intense the concentration, the more unidirectional it will be. And the more energy will be channelized, the more power will be generated. So absolutely he has made it so, explained it in such a way that I do not know if there is any such explanation which exists. So just for clarity, we will again sum up the points. I'll just share the whole discussion. Share the image. So this is the point, these are the points of today's discussion. The first thing we have to realize that why is this motion of the lungs so important? Why is control so important? Why is breathing so important? Because the center which regulates the respiratory system or the breathing system has a sort of controlling action over the whole system of nerve currents. That is why immediately when we become excited, the breathing becomes short. And immediately if you have deep breath, there's a very first practical guide to controlling anger. What do they say? If you are angry, just take a deep breath. That's the immediate thing we can do. Other things we will not listen to at that time. So what happens, as soon as we take a deep breath, the whole system becomes a little calm. Then we are able to think straight. So this is the first important point to remember. The center which regulates the respiratory system or the breathing system has a sort of controlling action over the whole system of nerve currents. Secondly, what happens? From rhythmical breathing comes a tendency of all the molecules in the body to move in the same direction. It is just like connecting wires, so positive and negative. And rhythm, it becomes unidirectional. Then when all the motions of the body have become perfectly rhythmical, the body has, as it were, become a gigantic battery of will. That will, we can, through that will, concentrated, powerful will, we can accomplish even very difficult tasks. So this tremendous will is what the yogi wants. So what does pranayama or breathing exercises do? They tend to bring a rhythmic action in the body and help us through the respiratory center to control other centers also. And finally, when it has become absolutely concentrated, that will has become extremely powerful through years and years and years of practice, meditation and all that, then it becomes powerful enough, that impulse becomes powerful enough to strike at the place where all the sensations are stored up, at the Muladhara. And then what is called the coiled up power is finally roused up and made to travel through the Sushumna. Then the journey starts, and then when it goes through center after center after center, then that person, the whole new world opens up before him. He has what are called super sensuous experiences which cannot be had through the ordinary senses. Those are called spiritual experiences. Not what we sometimes see in a dream, or say sometimes we imagine so many things. I have seen this, I have seen that. So this is the test. This is the only way in which spiritual illumination can be attained. So other things are all our imaginations, and they should be treated as imaginations. That is the thing. So this is how Swami Vivekananda explains in a wonderful way. I know it was a little complicated, I know, but slowly if we can go through this again once or twice, then it will be a lot clearer. So let us end here today. I had wanted to do this before our retreat, so that when very simple exercises are there of pranayama which we can do there. So we should actually know what is happening when we do those things, because we are not generally aware of what is happening. But those simple things also, they have a very significant reaction in the body. And when they are done regularly for a long period, then slowly changes take place. That is the thing. But this makes it clear what exactly happens, so that we know and we are aware, so that we can get more inspiration to follow the teachings. So then let us end here. Then I will just unmute you, those who are online first. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram